What happened over the last 5 years is that certain activist groups got wind of this process and really became strategic about influencing the direction of these corporations' senior leadership and their boards. And you saw this reflected in Target and Bud Light, where they started to make decisions that were not in the best interest of shareholders.
Do you want a wealthy retirement without worrying about money? Welcome to the Retire in Texas podcast, where you will discover how to enjoy your faith, your family, and your freedom in the state of Texas. And now, here's your host, financial advisor, author, and all-around good Texan, Daryl Lyons.
Hey, this is Daryl Lyons, CEO and co-founder of Pax Financial Group, and you're listening to Retire in Texas. Thanks for tuning in. This information is general in nature. It's not intended to provide specific investment, tax, or legal advice. Visit paxfinancialgroup.com for more information. And if you go to the website, hit connect now, and we'll connect you with a financial advisor here. There's 10 advisors at Pax. They have a heart of a teacher. They're an extension of what you hear on this program. And a 15-minute consult with them, it is not one of a salesman, but one that will see if it's a good fit. And so make sure you connect with an advisor through the connect button on paxfinancialgroup.com. Okay, so when you own a stock, and everyone typically owns stock, sometimes it's through mutual funds, sometimes it's through 401ks and ETFs and things like that. But just so you know, when you own a stock, you're an owner of a company. Never forget that. It's very, very important. It really helps in a lot of ways. I mean, one, you get the growth of a company. So if a company does well and they sell a lot of products and services, you get to participate in that growth. And two, if they have profits, at times they'll send those profits out to you in the form of a dividend. And so those are very nice. There's a third attribute to owning a company as a shareholder, and that's voting. And I've talked about this before. I'm going to talk about the latest and greatest news in the voting space. It's very interesting right now. Let me frame it up real quick. So when you vote, a lot of times, if you haven't owned individual stocks before, you don't get this through owning mutual funds and ETFs. But if you own individual stocks, you get a little piece of paper, typically in the mail, and it says, cast your vote for something. And when you cast your vote, what you're doing is it's a proxy vote. So you're making a statement, a proclamation that you can't attend the meeting. There's an annual shareholders meeting, and you're saying, I can't attend, but here's how I want somebody to proxy on my behalf. This is how I want somebody who is going to the meeting. This is how I want to vote. I can't be there, but this is what I want to vote on. And then it's all kinds of stuff. Like there could be a potential merger of the company. You could be voting on the executive compensation. I know that I just heard this morning that CalPERS is denying shareholder compensation to Elon Musk as a side, and they're doing it through the proxy voting. Other shareholder proposals, like conflicts of interest. I saw one where the leadership team and the board in general have too many conflicts of interest. So there was a resolution, a proposal to, hey, limit the conflicts of interest. You could vote on having checks and balances in place, succession planning, proper auditing, just refreshing the board. There's all kinds of very important governance, is what it's called, governance, to making sure that a company is operating efficiently and fairly for shareholders who are going about their day, sending their kids to school, soccer. This is how, again, it's an amazing system if you think about it. This is how it is self-governed, is through this proxy voting process that we often take for granted. And what happened over the last 5 years is that certain activist groups got wind of this process and really became strategic about influencing the direction of these corporations' senior leadership and their boards. And you saw this reflected in Target and Bud Light, where they started to make decisions that were not in the best interest of shareholders, which the best interest of shareholders is to make money, growing the company or paying out dividends. But it's changing. It's changing quite a bit. And it's actually pretty refreshing. I mean, we're not 100% through the nonsense, but like, for example, Amazon, they said, and this is a quote from them, that some of the proposals, and I don't know if they would have said this years ago, but Amazon said some of the proposals, this is the quote, contain assertions that we believe are incorrect or that reflect a fundamental lack of understanding of how our business operates. And so it's just refreshing that they're saying this is nonsense. And so they voted against all 14 outside proposals that came in, where I'm not sure, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, they probably would have considered that a lot more, even if it didn't make sense, even if it was nonsense. But today they're saying it doesn't make business sense. And I love that. And I think that we're starting to see that a lot more in corporate America. So that should give you some hope. Let me give you 3 quick examples of how this is playing out. Costco, as an example, I don't think of Costco like as a company that would be in the abortion business. I don't think you would either. Like, do what you do and do it really well. And I think this is thematically when I talk to people who are engaged in the advocacy platform and when they're actually talking to corporations, they just keep telling me over and over again, Daryl, we're not trying to push for Christian agendas. We're not trying to push for certain things. What we're trying to say is, hey, you as a company, stick to the mission and stop trying to do this nonsense stuff. Well, Costco is getting a lot of outside influence to sell abortion drugs through Costco. I have reason to believe that Costco didn't manufacture this idea internally. It's an external pressure. And so if that pressure continues to mount, then that'll end up happening where you go to Costco and anybody can get an abortion drug because the FDA actually removed the in-person dispensing requirement. So now pharmacies can dispense the drug to anyone with a prescription, whether in person or by mail. And so there's looser rules on these abortion drugs. And so outsiders are saying, Costco, we want you to start selling it. So what's interesting is that the other side is starting to come to the table and saying, hey, we've got different convictions. And so here's our message. And before, this other side never came to the table and said, we've got different convictions. They were just comfortable. I've used this word before. They were too comfortable. So now Inspire, a third-party asset manager, I'll talk about them later, actually sent us and many other shareholders, not a proxy vote, but a petition. I don't know why they went that route, but anyways, they sent a petition to us and a bunch of people of influence signed it saying, Costco, we need you to hear the other side of the story. There's another side of the story. And that story isn't necessarily of, we want you to sell something else. It's stick to your business and not to the nonsense. And most of these companies are saying, yeah, we're tired of having to cater to activists. So we'll see where that goes. But it's very interesting to see a petition going around Costco. Hey, there's a different group of people that have a different opinion. Hear us. The example number 2, recently, JPMorgan Chase, I don't know if you know this, but in 2021, there was this family council, Arkansas Family Council. They promote and protect and really strengthen traditional family values. And they really adhere to the Bible. That's what they do. And so they got kicked off of being able to use a payment service that was owned by JPMorgan Chase. And so this payment service is important because if people are going to fund your initiative, we always swipe our debit cards or punch in our numbers through the website to send a donation. They were just kicked off this payment service, which is very frustrating and very difficult. But the thing that really made it frustrating is this email that they got. And here's this email. This is the exact quote. Unfortunately, we can no longer support your business. We wish you all the luck in the future and hope that you find a processor that better fits your payment processing needs. So they're like, what the heck? And then the next year, this guy named Sam Brownback, he was a U.S. ambassador, former governor of Kansas. He had an organization called National Committee of Religious Freedom. Now, this is a 501c4, which is, it's a nonprofit, but you don't get a tax deduction whenever you make a contribution to this 501c4. 501c3 you do, but 501c4 you don't. So it has a political arm. So what they do, it's a good thing for whether you're Jewish, Muslim, whatever, it actually protects, proactively defends the constitutional rights of religious freedom so that all Americans and their religious communities and faith, they can peacefully and publicly exercise their religious beliefs. And they're permitted to legally promote and endorse political candidates. That's the framework of this organization. Well, JPMorgan Chase said, sorry, you can't bank with us anymore. What they told him is that it's irrevocable. Once they said that, then they came back and said, but we'll reconsider if you give us a list of your donors. That stuff by JPMorgan Chase is absolutely nonsense. Well, thank God, there's organizations that are actually saying, hear us out. You can't be doing this, JPMorgan Chase. And so a Christian law firm, they pushed back and they got JPMorgan Chase to reverse what they were doing. And they removed the terms of service that they had that allowed employees to leverage those terms of service to be able to debank Christian organizations or faith-based organizations. So Alliance Defending Freedom was able to push back against JPMorgan Chase. Will it happen again? I don't know, but they did make progress in removing language that was harmful to people who disagreed or had a different opinion. Okay, so that's good. Now, the third example is BlackRock. And for those that know, I've used BlackRock for, 20 years now. Before they got into the political arena, they were great asset managers for us. We had a good relationship with them. I flew up to New York, met their team, knew how they worked, knew a lot of their leaders. They were just one of the best asset managers around there. No nonsense, very good at risk management. They did their job well with excellence. But Larry Fink in his recent years has really made climate change a priority. And so I became very vocal and frustrated with BlackRock. Now, we still have clients that have legacy BlackRock positions. That's fine if they want to keep them. We're not going to force anyone out of BlackRock, but they just really frustrated me, some of their decision making. By the way, I find that having a dialogue with them, not yelling, which I do have a great dialogue, professional relationship. I express my concerns. I do it in a way that I think is very professional, and the relationship still works. I would like to think I've kind of nudged them a little bit to think about a potential differing opinion. But BlackRock's huge, as you know. And in 2023, they voted on 170,000 proposals. And this is 14,000 companies globally. So when they vote, it makes an impact. But here's what's interesting. And I just found this out. Very cool. So again, climate change was in the last several years a priority. And I would suggest to you at the expense of shareholder returns. That's the problem when there's a sacrifice, there's a conflict that shareholders are getting a reduced return because you're overemphasizing these initiatives. And again, climate change in and of itself, that's a different topic for discussion. But when there's this fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder returns and climate is being interjected and it doesn't make sense, then that's a problem. And so in 2021, they supported 47, about half of all climate shareholder proposals. So it was like almost every other one. But in 2023, only 6%. Only 6%. And they changed their attitude towards this. They said only if it has a material impact for the business. And I've seen some examples, and I guess you could make the case in these 6%, but I just want to recognize progress where progress has been made. They did not support. So there has been many proposals to cease providing finance or even insurance underwriting to these traditional fossil fuel companies. They did not support that initiative. And they've been supporting initiatives that I think make sense, like practical stuff. Like they told a gold company out of Canada, your board of directors are too old. They say tenured, but they're way too old. You need fresh blood in there to keep this company going. So those types of things, being an advocate for the well-being of an organization so they think through things critically and they hold them accountable to excellence. That's what we need these organizations for, because we're all doing life. And so that's where I wrap a bow on this thing. Pax Financial Group, we do what we can. As you know, I've done lobbying in the state and the federal level, and that's not my wheelhouse, but I do what I can. There's actually kind of interesting how I forgot, but there was actually a legislative bill a while back that they mentioned my name on the Capitol floor. I forgot about that. That was just a kind of a little feather in my cap, but whether it's meaningful or not, it was kind of interesting because I find myself trying to help where I can. And it's just rooted in just trying to protect those people who have deeply held convictions in their faith and trying to also protect small business. And we do what we can at PAX, but the challenge, most importantly, is operationally, our priority is the families in front of us. So we can't do too much because we really sincerely want to focus on the families in front of us. So I say all that because we do have great partners that do a lot of it. And so Inspire and Eventide, if you haven't used those asset managers, you can talk with your advisors. But those two organizations are very active in being advocates at the corporate level. And so we try to partner with those individuals that share our values, that can go to these shareholder meetings or talk with their executives and say, hey, there's a different point of view for you to consider. I do want to say, though, in closing, there's been progress made in corporate America. And I think that there's a lesson to be learned. There's a lesson to be learned that being comfortable and complacent has a price. And I think going forward, we're called to keep our guard up. And I think that's important on a go-forward basis to consider. And I just want you to wrestle with that in terms of your role in this ecosystem of life called business, money, and really just in our community as a whole. So thank you for listening in. As always, I just want to remind you that despite all the craziness, despite all the noise, you think different when you think long-term. Have a great day.